Hi there. Today we're peeling back the velvet curtain of myth to look at one of history's most romanticized professions. Forget the sleek video game protagonists and the cool detached movie heroes. Picture instead a cramped, damp alleyway somewhere in the medieval world. The reek of tallow smoke and unwashed humanity hangs heavy in the air. You're huddled in a doorway, shivering your stomach, a tight, aching knot. This isn't a heroic beginning. It's the start of your miserable new career path. Because tonight, we're exploring why it well and truly sucked to be an assassin. And let's be honest, given the historical realities, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference for the channel. And for a bit of fun, post your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your journey doesn't begin with a formal invitation or a classified ad in the local parchment. It starts with a whisper, a rumor, a desperate need for money revenge, or perhaps a misguided quest for purpose leads you to the fringes of society searching for a ghost. You're looking for a guild, a brotherhood, a hidden order spoken of only in hushed tones. Finding them is your first test, and it's a pass-fail exam with no retakes. For weeks, you've been leaving cryptic signs, following shadowy leads, and generally making yourself noticeable to people who specialize in not being noticed. It's a dangerous game. Show too much eagerness, and you're a liability. Too much caution, and you're useless. You have to be just right, the forgotten man in the corner of the tavern, the face that blends into any crowd. You think you're being clever, but the truth is, they've been watching you since the moment you first asked the wrong question to the right person. One night, it happens. A tap on the shoulder, a quiet word, a summons. You're led blindfolded through a labyrinth of streets you can no longer recognize. The air changes, growing colder, damper. When the blindfold is finally removed, you're in a bare torch-lit room. Stone walls, stone floor. Your potential employers are little more than silhouettes, their faces lost in the flickering shadows. There's no warm welcome, no HR department to walk you through the benefits package, mostly because there isn't one. Instead, you're stripped of your meager belongings and thrown into a cell. This is where the real audition begins. Your first trial is one of patience and endurance. You're left alone in the dark for days. Or is it weeks? Time blurs. There's no light, no sound, save for the drip, drip, drip of water somewhere nearby and the frantic beating of your own heart. They give you just enough stale bread and brackish water to keep you alive but weak. The goal is to break your spirit, to see if your mind cracks under the strain of absolute sensory deprivation. Many don't make it. They scream, they rave, they beat on the door until their knuckles are raw and broken. You, however, you endure. You focus on the dripping water, making it the anchor for your sanity. You doze in fits, losing yourself in feverish dreams. When they finally open the door, you're blinking and skeletal, but you're sane. You've passed. Your reward, another test. This one is about obedience and the ability to withstand pain. You're instructed to hold a specific agonizing posture for hours. Imagine a full squat, but with your arms extended forward, palms up. Now picture a grizzled taskmaster placing a fragile, priceless porcelain bowl in your hands. If you tremble and drop it, you fail. If your muscles give out, you fail. The punishment for failure is severe and immediate. This is a classic conditioning tactic, not unlike those supposedly used on young recruits in some schools of Japanese ninjutsu, designed to forge absolute discipline and a high tolerance for discomfort. It's less about strength and more about mental fortitude. Your thighs burn with a white-hot fire sweat pours into your eyes, but you hold on your world shrinking to the delicate object in your hands. The message is clear. Your comfort is irrelevant. Your life is less valuable than this bowl. Then comes the more esoteric part of your training. Perhaps your recruiters are followers of a particular creed, like the notorious Nizari Ismailis of Persia and Syria, better known to their enemies as the Hashashin. You've heard the tales that their leader, the old man of the mountain, would drug new recruits. You'd fall into a deep sleep and wake up in a place designed to mimic paradise. Beautiful gardens, flowing wine, enchanting music, and attentive companions catering to your every whim. After a few days of this intoxicating bliss, you'd be drugged again, only to awaken back in the cold, hard reality of the fortress at Alamut Castle. The promise, absolute loyalty, and successful missions would grant you a permanent return to that paradise upon your death. It was a powerful recruitment tool, a mainstream historical fact that cemented their fearsome reputation across the known world. Of course, historians still argue whether the tales of the Paradise Garden made famous by Marco Polo were literal truth or merely powerful propaganda designed to terrorize their enemies. For you, it doesn't matter if it's real or a hallucination. The seed of that promise is planted deep in your mind. Your final test is the one that truly seals your fate. It's a demonstration of loyalty. You might be asked to steal something insignificant, a baker's hat, a guard's water skin from a place teeming with people. The object is worthless. The act of acquiring it unnoticed is everything. Or the test might be darker. You could be ordered to harm an innocent, a stranger who has done nothing to you, simply to prove you have the stomach for the work ahead. Hesitate, and you've failed. Your life is forfeit. Comply, and you've crossed a line from which you can never return. You're no longer just a desperate soul. You're a tool, a weapon to be pointed and fired. You've passed your unpleasant application, but in doing so, you've lost the one thing you can never get back: your old self. The real sucky part hasn't even begun. Now that you're in, you might expect to be kitted out with the legendary tools of the trade. You picture yourself draped in shadow-black silks, light and silent, with an arsenal of gleaming master-crafted implements of death. The reality, as always, is a bitter disappointment. Your new wardrobe is decided for you, and it's a masterclass in blending in, which is to say, it's shabby, uncomfortable, and profoundly uncool. You're not meant to look like a deadly warrior. You're meant to look like a peasant, a dock worker, a pilgrim, a low-level scribe. Utterly forgettable. This means you're dressed in rough-spun wool or coarse burlap that scratches your skin raw, especially in the damp cold or the sweltering heat. The fit is terrible, either too tight in the shoulders or baggy enough to catch on every splintered doorway. Forget about laundry day. These clothes are permanently imbued with the smells of wood smoke, stale sweat, and whatever livestock you had to sleep near last night. You are a walking testament to the fact that high-performance, moisture-wicking fabrics are still many centuries in the future. And the gear itself, throw away any notion of a spring-loaded blade that snaps into your palm with a satisfying shink. Your primary tool isn't some fantastical weapon. It's a simple, brutal little thing. Most likely it's a knife, a short, easily concealed dagger that can be tucked into your belt boot or the sleeve of your grimy tunic. It might be something like the sika, a short, curved blade famously used by the Sicarii assassins in 1st century Judea. Its curved shape was brutally effective, designed not just for a simple stab, but for hooking and pulling in a chaotic crowd, making the wound more severe and your escape more likely. It's a worker's tool, ugly and practical. This isn't about dueling with honor. It's about a quick, messy moment of violence in a bustling marketplace before you melt back into the throng. Your weapons are chosen for their deniability. If you're caught, it's just a common knife one. Any traveler might carry for protection or to slice his daily bread and cheese. Nothing to see here. Of course, there are other, more specialized items in your kit, and this is where things get truly unpleasant. You have to get creative, and creativity in this line of work often involves things that are sticky smelly, or both. Need a small waterproof container to carry a potent sleeping powder or a vial of something nasty. Forget a tactical pouch. Try a hollowed out gourd, or even better, a dried and cleaned pig's bladder. It's pliable, holds a surprising amount, and is entirely waterproof. It's also, a pig's bladder. You might also carry small, thin bags made of animal intestine, filled with animal blood. Not for any arcane ritual, but for a simple, gross distraction. Toss one against a wall in a crowded street, and the sudden shocking splash of red creates a moment of panic and confusion, the perfect cover to make your move or your escape. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not burdened by a sense of dignity or a functioning gag reflex. Concealment is a constant nagging worry. Your life depends on these tools remaining hidden until the very last second. This means you spend hours carefully sewing hidden pockets into the lining of your tunic or carving out a hollow space in the heel of your worn-out leather shoe. A blowgun needle can be hidden in a reed pen, a garrote wire woven into the hem of your cloak. But these clever hiding spots come with their own risks. One bad stumble on a cobblestone street, and you could end up stabbing yourself in the thigh with your own poisoned blade. One clumsy moment while sitting down could snap that fragile vial you've so carefully tucked away, releasing its contents all over you. Historians still argue whether the fabled poison ring, a piece of jewelry with a hidden compartment for a dose of toxin, was a common tool of assassins or a theatrical invention popularized by Renaissance storytellers. While it sounds elegant, the reality for you is far less glamorous. You're more likely to have a dose of something lethal wrapped in oilcloth and tucked into a body cavity you'd rather not think about. Your tools aren't a source of power. They are a source of constant low-grade misery and risk. Every item you carry is another liability, another thing that could expose you, another piece of evidence that could condemn you. There's no utility belt full of gadgets, just a sad collection of functional, often disgusting items that you have to maintain and hide. You have to sharpen your own blades, mix your own foul concoctions, and mend your own scratchy clothes. After all that work in your initial training, all that psychological conditioning you endured back at the fortress, your grand reward is to be issued a dirty tunic, a cheap knife, and a bag of miscellaneous animal parts. The sucky reality is sinking in one disgusting piece of gear at a time. Among all the miserable items in your sad little collection of gear, some are more treacherous than others. That cheap knife might cut you if you're clumsy, but some of the other tools in your kit are actively trying to kill you from the moment you handle them. Let's talk about poison. It's the art of the subtle, kill the weapon of choice, for those who prefer not to get into a messy brawl. It sounds clean, elegant even. But for you, the one tasked with handling and delivering it, it's one of the most terrifying aspects of the job. You are your own first potential victim. The work begins in your miserable little hideout, which doubles as a makeshift and highly unsanitary laboratory. There are no sterile beakers, no ventilation hoods, no fancy latex gloves. Your personal protective equipment is basically just trying not to breathe too deeply. You're hunched over a crude mortar and pestle grinding dried leaves or mysterious-looking berries into a fine powder. The air grows thick with a bitter, acrid dust that settles on every surface, including your skin and the stale bread you'll eat later. One careless inhale, one moment of rubbing your eye with a contaminated finger could be the end. You might be working with something like belladonna, the infamous deadly nightshade. This is a mainstream poison throughout much of history. Its berries a tempting but fatal trap. The irony isn't lost on you that wealthy ladies in cities like Rome would use a diluted form of this very plant as eye drops. The atropine it contains dilates the pupils, which was considered alluring. It's a funny thing to think about as you carefully process a version so concentrated that a single drop of its juice would be enough to stop a heart. Every tap of the pestle feels like a gamble. Once the substance is prepared, you face the second great peril: transportation. Remember that pig's bladder or hollowed-out shoe heel. This is what it's for. You have to carry a substance of lethal potency on your person, often for days as you travel to your target. Every step is a prayer. Every stumble on an uneven road sends a jolt of pure ice through your veins. If the container leaks, you could be slowly poisoning yourself, absorbing the toxin through your skin. You'd become weak, dizzy, disoriented, showing all the signs of sickness that would make you useless for your mission, and likely get you cast out of your hiding spot to die alone in a ditch. The psychological strain is immense. It's like carrying a live, invisible snake in your pocket, one that could bite you at any moment without warning. This constant low-level exposure might have you fantasizing about building up an immunity, becoming invincible to your own wares. You've heard the legends after all. And indeed, historians still argue about the case of Mithridates VI of Pontus, a powerful king who lived a couple of centuries before the Sicarii. He was so paranoid about being poisoned by his enemies that he supposedly dosed himself with a daily cocktail of sublethal poisons, a practice now called Mithridatism, to render himself immune. Whether this actually worked or is just a fantastic story is up for debate. For a common practitioner like you, attempting such a thing is a fool's errand. You don't have a royal physician to monitor your dosage. You're more likely to just give yourself chronic liver damage and a permanent tremor in your hands, which isn't exactly a top skill in the assassination business. Finally, if you survive the prep and the transport, you face the delivery. This is the moment of ultimate tension. You have to slip the powder or liquid into a goblet of wine or a dish of stew, often in a crowded, well-lit hall. Your hands must be steady, your movements invisible. But you're trembling not just from fear of being caught, but from fear of the substance itself. What if you spill a single fatal grain onto your own skin? What if in the split second you tilt the vial over the cup, a tiny invisible droplet splashes back at you? Some of the more exotic poisons, like the potent tetrodotoxin, harvested from the organs of a pufferfish in Japan, are famously unforgiving. Preparing it is a deadly art in itself, and handling it requires a level of care you can barely manage in your perpetually stressed state. The line between assassin and victim is paper thin, and you are walking it every single second. Poison isn't a clean or easy way out. It's a messy, nerve-wracking dance with death, where your own life is just as much at stake as your target's. So, you're enduring a life of constant discomfort and mortal peril. You've survived an initiation designed to break you. You're dressed in rags that feel like a punishment in themselves, and you spend your days handling equipment that is either disgusting, dangerous, or both. Remember the nerve-shredding anxiety of preparing that poison. The constant fear of a leaky pig's bladder ending your career and your life in some flea-bitten hovel. You have to ask yourself, what is the grand reward for all this risk? Surely the compensation must be immense. You're a specialist, a phantom, a purveyor of final justice. They must be backing up a cart full of gold to your door for every job, right? Well, let's talk about your salary, because this is perhaps the most sucky part of all. You are woefully, almost comically underpaid. First, let's get one thing straight. Not all assassins in history were motivated by coin. When a group of Roman senators led by men like Brutus and Cassius decided to end the career of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE, they weren't doing it for a paycheck. They were wealthy aristocrats acting out of political ideology, fear of tyranny, and personal ambition. They were trying to preserve the Republic, or so they claimed. Their reward was supposed to be political power and historical glory. But you are not Brutus. You are not a nobleman with a grand villa and a political manifesto. You are a disposable blade, a desperate soul who traded freedom for a promise of security, and your motivation is much simpler. You need to eat. And the organization you work for knows this. They preyed on your desperation to recruit you, and they exploit it to keep you cheap. Your contracts are not elegant scrolls sealed with wax. They are whispered instructions from a handler in a dark room, a verbal agreement with no witnesses and no recourse. The identity of the client is almost always a secret, a layer of protection for the powerful personage who wants someone gone. This means you have zero bargaining power. You are told the target, the location, and the fee. Take it or leave it. And since leaving it might be interpreted as a breach of loyalty with fatal consequences, you always take it. It's less of a negotiation and more of a work assignment at the universe's most soul-crushing temp agency. The pay structure is a cruel joke designed to ensure your continued servitude. You might be paid a small amount up front. A pittance, really. Just enough coin to cover the cost of travel, a week's worth of stale bread, and maybe a bribe for a stable boy. The real payment, the part that's supposed to make it all worthwhile, is promised upon completion. This classic half, now half later model is a scam as old as time. Once the deed is done, collecting that second half becomes a new perilous mission. Your employer now has a very strong incentive not to pay you. After all, you are a loose end, a living witness to their crime. Why pay you when they can simply have another agent remove you from the payroll? Sometimes, the payment isn't even in coin. As a quirky but cruel alternative, you might be offered payment in kind. Perhaps you're promised a full pardon for a crime you committed in your past life, a clean slate. This sounds wonderful, but the pardon is only as good as the word of the official who grants it, and that official can be replaced, change their mind, or flat out deny ever having met you. Or you could be promised a small plot of land, a farmstead, to call your own. The deed is yours, once the target is eliminated. Sounds like a dream retirement plan until you find out the land is a rocky, barren patch in a disputed border region, and 3 other families have a claim to it, all of them bigger and meaner than you. These kinds of deals are just another form of control, a fantasy to keep you motivated. You are, after all, just an asset, and a disposable one at that. Historians still argue whether the legendary wealth of organizations like the Nizari Ismailis was distributed among their agents or hoarded by the leadership funding their mountain fortresses and political ambitions. But you on the ground see no evidence of this fabulous wealth. You see only the daily grind. You are risking your life, your sanity, and what's left of your soul, not for a king's ransom, but for the equivalent of a few months' rent in a place you can never call home. It's the ultimate dead-end job. You're risking everything for what amounts to a few months' rent in a place you can never truly call home. So let's talk about that home. The word you're really looking for is hideout, or maybe bolt hole. And whatever you call it, it is a masterclass in misery. Forget the romantic image of a cozy secret lair behind a swiveling bookcase stocked with maps and fine wines. Because of that crappy pay we just discussed, your budget doesn't exactly stretch to luxury accommodations. Your safe house is less of a sanctuary and more of a squalid, pest-infested hole that actively wishes you harm. It's the kind of place that would get 0 stars on any medieval travel site, mostly for the unlisted 6-legged roommates and the pervasive sense of despair. Imagine a damp, lightless cellar beneath a noisy tavern. The floor is packed earth, always cold and clammy to the touch. The air is thick, with the smell of sour wine seeping through the floorboards above, mixed with the sweet, sickly scent of mold and rat droppings. Your bed is a pile of straw in the corner, probably crawling with things you don't want to identify, and your only companion is the fat black spider spinning a web in the corner, who, to be fair, is probably the only resident you can trust. Or maybe you're in a forgotten attic freezing in the winter and suffocating in the summer, with the wind whistling through the gaps in the roof tiles, promising to tear the whole structure apart in the next storm. This isn't a base of operations. It's a place to fester between assignments, a place that saps your strength and morale. Finding even this level of squalor is a challenge. You need a place where you can disappear, where no one asks questions. Historians still argue about the existence and complexity of so-called thieves' guilds or organized underworld networks that could provide reliable safe houses for a fee. The stories speak of secret signs, passwords, and a brotherhood of criminals looking out for one another. For you, the reality is less like a structured organization and more like a series of desperate, unreliable arrangements. You're paying a cut of your meager earnings to a shifty landlord who knows you're a fugitive. He'll take your coin, but his loyalty is fleeting. For a few more silver pieces from the city guard, he'd give you up in a heartbeat. Every knock on the door, every unfamiliar voice in the street below could be the prelude to your discovery. Sometimes the hideout has a hiding place within it, and this is where the misery gets concentrated. Think of the priest holes built into English manors during the Tudor period. These were ingeniously concealed tiny airless chambers designed to hide Catholic priests from Protestant authorities. Your own bolt hole might feature a similar, less grand version, a crawl space under a loose floorboard, a hollowed-out section of wall behind a tapestry. At the first sign of danger, you have to cram yourself into this space. The world shrinks to a coffin of darkness and stale air. You lie there, muscles screaming, trying to breathe silently as you hear the heavy boots of guards walking just feet away. They could be there for hours, searching, tapping the walls. It is a claustrophobic, living burial, and the terror of being found is matched only by the terror of being forgotten and left to perish in your own sanctuary. Desperate times might even lead you to seek protection on holy ground. In many parts of the medieval world, a fugitive could claim the right of sanctuary by reaching a church. In theory, secular law couldn't touch you there. This is a well-known historical fact, but it's no vacation. You become a prisoner of the parish. You cannot leave the church grounds. You must obey the orders of the priests, and you're stuck in a confined space with dozens of other desperate, often violent refugees. Powerful enemies might not be able to send guards in to drag you out, but they can wait. They can post watchers on every exit waiting for the 40-day limit on your stay to expire, or for your hunger and desperation to finally drive you out into their arms. The safety of the church is just another kind of trap, a well-lit cage instead of a dark one. Your hideout, therefore, is never a place of rest. It provides no comfort, no peace, only a different flavor of fear and a constant draining reminder of your lonely, precarious existence. Your hideout provides no comfort, only a different flavor of fear and a constant draining reminder of your lonely, precarious existence. That cage, whether it's a damp cellar or the confines of a church, begins to work on your mind in insidious ways. The physical misery, the cold, the hunger, the grime, is something you can almost get used to. But the mental decay is a deeper, more corrosive force. It has a name, and you learn to know it intimately: paranoia. It starts as a low hum in the back of your skull and grows until it's a screaming chorus that drowns out everything else. This isn't the healthy caution of a trained operative. It's a soul-crushing certainty that the entire world is a web of threats, and you are the fly caught in the center. It poisons every human interaction. You walk through a crowded market, and you can't see the vibrant tapestry of life. You see only danger. The woman haggling over fish could be a spotter noting your position. The street urchin who bumps into you might be a pickpocket, or he might be planting a blade in your ribs. Remember how your greatest skill was meant to be blending in, becoming that anonymous face in the crowd. The irony is that now, the crowd itself is your greatest source of terror. Every person is a potential agent of your destruction. You start to recognize the specific ways a person's posture changes when they are watching someone. You notice the unnatural way two men stop their conversation when you draw near. Are these real threats or just shadows your mind is creating? You can no longer tell the difference. The paranoia extends most dangerously to your own side. You cannot trust anyone. Not your handler, who might be testing your loyalty or setting you up to fail. Not the shifty landlord of your hideout, who you know would sell you out for a pittance. And certainly not other assassins. A fellow agent isn't a colleague. They are a rival. They might covet your assignment, or they might be tasked with cleaning up loose ends. And you are always a loose end. This gnawing distrust seeps into your most basic routines. You can't simply sit down to a meal. Where did the food come from? Who prepared it? Kings and nobles have food tasters for a reason. You develop your own crude, pathetic versions of this. You might leave a piece of bread out for the rats, and if they're still scurrying around in the morning, you might risk eating the rest of the loaf. It's a miserable way to live, a constant nagging fear that the very thing you need to survive might be the thing that kills you. Sleep offers no escape. In fact, it becomes the most vulnerable time of all. You can't sink into deep restorative rest. You learn to doze in short, fitful bursts. Your body tense, one hand always resting on the hilt of the knife tucked under your straw pillow. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant shout, every gust of wind rattles you awake, your heart hammering against your ribs. It's like having a permanent case of high alert anxiety, but instead of checking your phone for a new message, you're scanning the shadows for a flicker of movement that means your time is up. Historians still argue whether the most successful clandestine agents were sociopaths who felt no fear or hyper-aware individuals perpetually fueled by a finely tuned sense of terror. Looking at your trembling hands, you're pretty sure you know the answer. Ultimately, your greatest fear isn't just a quick, violent death, it's something worse: erasure. The ancient Romans had a practice for their most hated enemies and traitors called damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. An official decree would be passed, and the person's name would be chiseled off monuments, their statues melted down, their very existence struck from the record. You realize that this is the guild's ultimate power over you. If you fail, or if you simply become inconvenient, they won't just kill you. They will erase you. No one will remember your name. No one will mark your grave because you won't have one. It will be as if you never existed at all. This is the end point of all the paranoia, the understanding that you are utterly, terrifyingly alone and disposable. The constant crippling fear doesn't just suck, it hollows you out from the inside, leaving a shivering wreck long before any enemy blade finds you. That constant crippling paranoia isn't just a free-floating anxiety. It's a tightly wound spring, and all that tension is meant to be released in a single focused moment of action. All the training, the squalid living, the handling of poisons and cheap knives, it all leads to this. The job, the moment you step out of the shadows. But all the mental preparation in the world can't account for simple dumb luck and the universe's cruel sense of humor. What happens when that critical moment arrives and everything just falls apart? Let's take a slow walk through the anatomy of a botched job, the moment all your worst fears come true. You're in position. Weeks of surveillance have led you here. You know the target's route, the number of guards, the way the light falls in the corridor at this exact time of day. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs, a rhythm of pure adrenaline. You've recited the plan in your head 1,000 times. You are a coiled snake ready to strike. The target rounds the corner just as you knew he would. You surge forward, your cheap, familiar knife in hand. And then it happens. Not a dramatic cinematic sword fight, but a clumsy, pathetic failure. The blade, the one you've sharpened 100 times, snags on the unexpectedly thick velvet of the target's cloak. For a split second, your arm is tangled. It's all it takes. The target stumbles back with a shout more surprised than hurt. A guard you didn't account for, one who must have been standing just inside a doorway, lunges and grabs your wrist in a grip of pure iron. The element of surprise is gone. The mission is over. Failure is total. What follows is pure, unadulterated chaos. The guard's shout is echoed by others. An alarm bell begins to clang, a frantic, deafening peal that signals your doom. Your carefully planned primary escape route, a quick dash down a side hall, is instantly filled with running, shouting men-at-arms. You wrench your arm free and turn to your backup plan, melting into the confusion of the nearby courtyard. But the crowd, which was supposed to be your camouflage, has become a panicked, screaming mob. Worse, some of them have seen what happened. They aren't just fleeing, they're pointing at you. The sea of anonymous faces you were counting on has become 100 accusers. There's no restart from last checkpoint option here. This is real life, and the difficulty level just rocketed past impossible. Your whole plan was built on a network of small crucial details, and now they are all collapsing. The gatekeeper, your handler, paid off to leave a side entrance unlocked. He saw the commotion, got cold feet, and has thrown the bolt. Your contact, who was meant to cause a distraction in the market square, perhaps like one of the conspirators in the plot against England's King James Lauren, he had a friend he wanted to save, sent a warning, and the whole plot unraveled. Whatever the reason, your safety net has vanished. You are utterly alone. If by some miracle you escape the initial chaos, you are now in a worse position than before you started. You are a known fugitive. Your face, or at least your description, is the talk of the town. You can't go back to your hovel of a hideout. It's the first place they'll look. You cannot contact your handler. You are a failed asset, a walking liability. Your name is now on 2 kill lists, the city guards and your own guilds. They will hunt you to silence you, to erase the failure. All that paranoia about being disposable has just been proven right. And if you're caught, the end is swift and ugly. You'll be celebrated as a failure. In 1840, a young man named Edward Oxford fired 2 pistols at Queen Victoria's carriage. He missed spectacularly, was caught immediately, and the attempt actually made the young queen wildly popular, a mainstream historical fact showing how failure can backfire. Oxford was eventually found not guilty by reason of insanity, but you won't get such a nuanced verdict. For you, there will be a brief, brutal interrogation, followed by a very public and very painful execution. As you stand on the scaffold, you might hear how the target's political position has never been stronger, his support solidified by the failed attempt on his life. After your death, when the powerful men who hired you discuss the event, historians will still argue whether your attempt was a genuine but incompetent effort or a deliberately flawed demonstration, intended to send a message without actually killing the target. Your life and death, your spectacular failure, was just a move in a political game you were never meant to understand. That catastrophic failure on the job, the botched attempt that ends in your capture, or a desperate flight into the unknown, doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's often the result of a single weak link in a very fragile chain. And more often than not, that weak link is you. Not because you're incompetent, your brutal training saw to that, but because you're human. And the human body is a fragile, messy, and deeply unreliable piece of equipment. It gets tired, it gets injured, and it gets sick. In your line of work, however, there is absolutely no room for any of it. There are no sick days, no holidays, no moments of rest. The job is 24/7, and the moment you cease to be a flawless instrument, you become a liability. It starts with a tickle in your throat, then a cough. By nightfall, you're shivering uncontrollably in your damp, filthy hideout, a fire raging in your veins. Remember those squalid living conditions? The rat-infested cellar, the foul water, the constant exposure to the elements. They aren't just miserable, they're a breeding ground for every ailment imaginable. And this is an era before the mainstream understanding of germ theory. You don't know about bacteria or viruses. Sickness is a mysterious affliction, a punishment from God, or perhaps bad humors in your blood. A simple case of influenza, or a gut-wrenching bout of dysentery, things that a future society might treat with a few days of rest and medicine, are potential death sentences for you. You can't just call in sick. Your handler doesn't care about your fever. An assignment is an assignment. So you drag your aching body out into the world trying to complete a task that requires peak physical and mental acuity. Every movement is an effort. Your hands tremble, making delicate work, like picking a lock or handling a poison vial, nearly impossible. The fever clouds your judgment, slowing your thoughts, making you miss the subtle details you were trained to notice: the new guard on patrol, the slightly altered route of your target, and the coughing. A deep, rattling cough is a dead giveaway. You try to stifle it, your body convulsing, with the effort, tears streaming from your eyes. You're supposed to be a ghost, a shadow, but now you're a walking beacon of weakness and noise, broadcasting your presence to everyone around you. You are a botched job waiting to happen. If you're not on assignment, being sick in your hideout is its own special kind of hell. You have to suffer in absolute silence. A moan of pain, a delirious cry in the night. These are sounds that could alert your shifty landlord or a curious neighbor. You lie in your filthy straw teeth, chattering, praying for the fever to break before you betray your own location. And you can't seek proper help. A respectable physician would ask too many questions. Your only option might be a back alley barber surgeon whose primary solution for any internal ailment is bloodletting. This is the quirky and horrifying reality of medicine for your class. The cure for your fever and weakness involves him opening a vein and draining a pint of your blood, leaving you even weaker and more vulnerable than before. It's the 14th century equivalent of looking up your symptoms online and convincing yourself the only solution is something drastic and ill-advised. This glimpse of your own frailty, this intimate encounter with your body's limitations, forces you to think about the future. What happens when you get older? When your joints ache, your eyes grow dim, and you can no longer keep up with the physical demands of the job. You are a finely tuned weapon, but all weapons dull with time. Historians still argue about whether assassin guilds had any protocol for retiring agents who were too old or infirm to work, or if the only retirement plan was a quiet dagger in the back to tie up loose ends and ensure their silence. Lying there, in your own sweat and misery, you can guess the answer. There is no pension plan, no golden handshake. Your value is tied directly to your physical utility. The relentless, unforgiving nature of the work means your body is just another piece of gear. The moment it shows the slightest defect, it's marked for disposal. Your value to the guild is tied directly to your physical utility, and your body is marked for disposal the moment it shows a defect. You are a weapon, sharpened and aimed. But here's a chilling thought. Every weapon can be parried, broken, or met by a stronger one. Your training has conditioned you to think of your targets as objectives, soft, complacent figures, protected by guards you can outwit, and fortifications you can bypass. You are the predator. They are the prey. It's a simple, comforting equation. But the most terrifying moments of your miserable career will come when you discover that this equation was dreadfully, fatally wrong. What happens when the sheep you were sent to silently slaughter turns out to be a wolf in disguise? The plan is perfect. The target is a wealthy merchant, old and fat, who has crossed one of your guild's mysterious clients. You've studied his routine for a week. He takes a walk in his walled garden every evening after his meal alone to aid his digestion. His personal guards are lazy and stay in the main house warming themselves by the fire. It's the perfect scenario, a gentle stroll to a quiet murder. You slip over the wall like a phantom, your footsteps silent on the soft loam. You see his silhouette against the twilight. You draw your simple, ugly knife, the one that feels like an extension of your hand. You close the distance. He hasn't seen you. He hasn't heard you. It's happening. You lunge. And in that instant, your universe shatters. The old fat merchant moves with a speed that seems impossible. He doesn't cry out or stumble. He pivots not away from you, but into your attack. One of his hands, surprisingly strong, deflects your knife arm, while the other, holding a heavy walking stick, you dismissed as a prop cracks across your wrist. You hear a snap and feel a lance of white-hot agony. Your knife clatters uselessly to the ground. Before you can even register the pain, he's on you. This isn't a panicked rich man flailing for his life. These are the precise economical movements of a trained fighter. He's a retired legionary, a former mercenary, who bought his way into a comfortable life, but never forgot the brutal lessons of his youth. You have made a terrible, terrible life choice. This is the historical equivalent of trying to mug a quiet librarian who turns out to be a retired special agent. You are outclassed, outmatched, and your carefully constructed plan has just met a brick wall of reality. Sometimes it's not the person, but the preparation that undoes you. The target's defenses can be unexpectedly quirky. You might spend hours bypassing locks and avoiding watchmen, only to be foiled by a flock of geese. It sounds absurd, but the ancient Romans famously credited a gaggle of geese at the Temple of Juno with saving their capital from a stealthy Gallic invasion, their honking waking the guards when the dogs slept on. You might find yourself in a similar situation, creeping across a lawn, when a sudden deafening chorus of angry squawks erupts from the darkness, bringing the entire household running. It's a humiliating, terrifying, and frankly ridiculous way to fail to be outsmarted by a bird. This brutal reality check forces you to reevaluate the very nature of your targets. You're sent after powerful people, and powerful people make enemies. They don't survive by being helpless. Think of a man like Philip II of Macedon, father of Alexander the Great. He was a battle-hardened warrior king, the leader of the most formidable army of his day. To get to him, his assassin had to be one of his own 7 elite bodyguards, a man named Pausanias, who struck during a public festival. It was a successful but suicidal mission against the hardest of targets. Your merchant is no king, but he exists in the same world. He knows he is a target. This experience makes you wonder about all the others. Historians still argue whether powerful figures who survived multiple assassination attempts did so through skill and preparation, or if they were simply lucky, their would-be killers being consistently incompetent. After having your wrist snapped by a man you assumed was harmless, you are suddenly quite certain it's the former. If you manage to escape bleeding broken and utterly humiliated, you carry a new kind of fear with you. It's worse than the paranoia. It's the ice-cold certainty that you are not the ultimate threat. The world is not your hunting ground. It's an arena, and you just learned that you are not the top predator. Far from it. This wasn't just a botched job like the one we imagined before. This was a fundamental dismantling of your professional confidence. The people you hunt can hunt you back, and they might be much, much better at it. That knowledge is a heavier burden than any physical injury. That heavy knowledge, the ice-cold certainty that you are not the alpha predator in this deadly game, becomes your constant companion. It's a weight on your soul, a permanent crack in your professional confidence. And you have plenty of time to dwell on this newfound fear, because not all your assignments are conveniently located in the same city. Often, the target is in a distant province across mountains or over the sea. Your job requires travel. And for someone in your position, travel is just another word for prolonged, mobile suffering. Forget any romantic notions of adventure on the open road. Your journey is a grueling ordeal that's designed to grind you down long before you ever reach your destination. First of all, you are not riding a magnificent steed. Remember that low pay and the fact that you're a disposable asset. That means you don't get a travel allowance for a horse. You are on foot for days, weeks, sometimes months. You are marching, trudging, slogging your way across the landscape. The physical toll is immense. Your boots, if you're lucky enough to have sturdy ones, rub your feet raw, raising blisters that pop and become infected. Your muscles scream in protest, a constant deep ache in your calves and back from carrying your meager possessions and gross gear. You're basically through hiking a very dangerous trail with none of the fancy lightweight equipment or high-energy snacks. Your trail mix is a stale crust of bread and a growing sense of profound regret. Even in the best-case scenario, say you're traveling through the heart of the Roman Empire at its height, the journey is still a nightmare. Yes, the Romans were master road builders. A mainstream historical fact you can see in the stone highways that cut straight across the land. But these roads were not built for your comfort. They were built for legions. The hard, unforgiving stone surface is brutal on the feet designed for the steady tramp of hobnailed sandals, not your solitary trek. And while the roads might be direct, they are also exposed. Historians still argue whether the roads during the height of the Pax Romana were truly as safe as imperial propaganda claimed, or if banditry and danger were still a constant threat just beyond the sight of the legions. You traveling alone and looking like a vulnerable nobody are a prime target for every brigand and cutthroat hiding in the woods just off the road. When night falls, you can't simply conjure a comfortable camp. You need shelter, and your options are universally terrible. The roadside inns and taverns are not the cozy, cheerful places of songs and stories. They are filthy loud and incredibly dangerous. For a few coins, you don't get a private room. You get a spot on the floor of a common room crammed in with a dozen other snoring, coughing, lice-infested travelers. Or, if you're lucky, you share a single enormous bed with 3 or 4 complete strangers. Sleep is almost impossible, and you have to keep one hand on your coin purse and the other on your knife all night. The innkeeper is just as likely to murder you for your boots as the other guests are. The food is a culinary disaster and a biological hazard. You're served watered-down ale and a pottage known as traveler's stew, which seems to be made from whatever scraps were on the floor and any animal that was moving too slowly that day. And the company is even less savory. The room is filled with beggars, vagabonds, and other shady characters. As a quirky and unsettling feature of this underworld, many of them speak to each other in a secret cant, a slang language like Klyak or thieves' cant, designed to be incomprehensible to outsiders like you. You sit in a corner, isolated, listening to them mutter and laugh, wondering if they're sharing a bawdy joke or planning how they're going to rob you the moment you step outside. Your paranoia, already your constant companion, flares into overdrive. Every part of the journey, the physical exhaustion, the constant threat of violence, the miserable food, and the squalid lodgings is engineered to wear you down, to make you weak and desperate. The assignment doesn't begin when you reach the target city. It begins here on the road, and it sucks every step of the way. The assignment doesn't begin when you reach the target city. It begins on the road, and it sucks every step of the way. All that time spent walking with nothing but the rhythmic crunch of your boots on gravel, and the whisper of the wind for company gives your mind far too much space to wander. During the day, you're consumed by the immediate fears of bandits' bad water and suspicious travelers. But at night, huddled in some filthy inn, or shivering in a ditch, when the world goes quiet, something else creeps in from the dark corners of your memory. Ghosts. Not the spectral clanking chains kind, but the far more persistent ghosts of the people you've killed. Your mind, left unguarded, becomes a haunted house of your own making. It starts in your dreams. You're back in that corridor, or that alleyway, or that bedchamber. You see the face of a target, a face you tried not to look at, a face you've tried to forget. In the cold calculus of the contract, they were just an objective, a name whispered by your handler. But in your dreams, they are horribly, vividly human. You remember the look of confusion in their eyes turning to terror. You hear the soft, final exhalation of breath. You feel the warmth of their life seeping away. These aren't memories of a job well done. They are invasive, visceral replays of your worst moments. You see the merchant, whose guards you evaded, the political rival you poisoned, and maybe even the innocent stranger you were forced to harm as part of your initiation, the one that proved you were capable of this life. They don't speak or accuse. They just watch you from the darkness behind your eyes. To survive, you try to build a wall inside your head. You tell yourself it was necessary. It was a job. They were bad people, probably. Your guild wouldn't have targeted them if they weren't right. You cling to this flimsy justification, repeating it like a mantra. You work to cauterize your own empathy, to kill the part of you that feels remorse. You try to become the cold, unfeeling tool they want you to be. But this process is its own form of poison. In your attempt to murder your conscience, you begin to lose your connection to everything else. Joy, kindness, hope, they all become foreign concepts, colors you can no longer see. Historians still argue whether soldiers and assassins in the past were more desensitized to killing due to the harshness of daily life, or if the psychological trauma was just as severe, but simply went undocumented and unexpressed. As you jolt awake for the third time in a night, your heart pounding from a nightmare you can't shake, you are the living, suffering proof of the latter. In a world steeped in faith and a fear of divine judgment, your torment is not just psychological, it's spiritual. This is a mainstream fact of your era. You hear the peal of church bells from a distant village, and it sounds like a judgment against you. The concepts of sin, penance, and redemption are all around you, but they are a feast to which you will never be invited. Your soul, you are certain, is irrevocably stained. You can never confess your deeds to a priest. You can never receive absolution. This leads you to fixate on strange fringe folklore. You hear a whispered tale about a sin-eater, a local outcast, who for a small fee would ritually consume a meal over a corpse, supposedly taking the sins of the deceased onto themselves so the soul could ascend to heaven. What a bizarre, beautiful idea. Lying awake at night, you fantasize about it. If only someone could come and eat your sins while you're still alive. It's like wishing for a supernatural therapist, but one who also scrubs your soul clean. It's a desperate, hopeless wish for a peace you can never have. The cruelest irony is that this internal decay makes you worse at your job. The ghosts make your hands tremble. The sleepless nights dull your senses and slow your reaction time. The weight of your past actions makes you hesitate at the crucial moment. The very coping mechanisms you develop to survive the memories are the things that will get you killed. The physical dangers of your profession are obvious. But it's this slow, internal rot, the methodical murder of your own spirit, that truly defines the horror of your life. Your body may be free, but your mind has become a prison, and its cells are filled with the ghosts of everyone you've put in the ground. Your mind has become a prison, its cells crowded with the ghosts of everyone you've put in the ground. The problem with a prison full of ghosts is that there's no room for anyone else. That internal haunting, the slow and steady decay of your soul, inevitably bleeds out into the waking world. It surrounds you with a different kind of emptiness, a void where human connection ought to be. More than the physical danger, the low pay, or the miserable living conditions, this might be the cruelest consequence of your chosen path. Your profession doesn't just demand your skill and your nerve. It demands your absolute solitude, guaranteeing you a lonely and loveless life. Friendship, the simple comfort of having a companion you can trust, is a luxury you can never afford. Your paranoia, which you've honed into a survival mechanism, makes it impossible. How can you trust the kind stranger who shares his bread with you on the road? He might be trying to poison you. How can you confide in the fellow mercenary you share a drink with at a tavern? He might be an agent of the law or a rival looking for an advantage. Every potential friend is a potential threat. Every act of kindness is suspect. You view the world through a thick, distorted lens of mistrust, and it isolates you completely. Even if you could conquer your paranoia, your life is structured against companionship. The constant travel means you never stay in one place long enough to put down roots. Any bond you form would be severed by your next assignment. And what about your colleagues, the other agents of the guild? Surely there's a brotherhood there, a bond forged in shared danger. No. That's a romantic fantasy. Your fellow assassins are your competitors, and sometimes your executioners. Historians still argue about the extent to which people in clandestine or criminal professions, spies, thieves, assassins form genuine lasting bonds with each other, or if their relationships were always temporary and based purely on transactional utility. You know the grim reality. Your handler is your boss, not your friend. The agent you work with on a mission is a temporary asset and just as likely to eliminate you afterward, to tie up a loose end. This enforced solitude cuts deepest when it comes to love and family. You see it everywhere, a husband and wife laughing in the marketplace, a father lifting his child onto his shoulders, a young couple stealing a secret glance. These simple universal scenes of human life are a world away from you. To love someone would be to put a target on their back. A wife, a child, they would be your greatest vulnerability, a weakness that your enemies or even your own masters could exploit to control you or destroy you. The only way to keep someone safe from your world is to never let them into it. And so, you are left with a hollow ache. To have a relationship, you would have to build it on a foundation of lies. Imagine trying to explain your long absences, the scars on your hands, the haunted look in your eyes. It's hard to build a future with someone when your entire life story is a secret and you can't talk about your work. In the world of the powerful marriage is often a tool, a mainstream historical fact you see all the time. A nobleman marries the daughter of another to form an alliance to secure land and power. These dynastic matches are business transactions. But even within that cold calculus, there is a partnership, a lineage, a place within the grand structure of society. You are denied even that. You exist entirely outside of it all. Sometimes you'll see a small, poignant symbol of this other life. You might notice a woman wearing a Fed ring, a popular style in many parts of Europe. It's a simple band, but its bezel is shaped like two hands clasped together, a token of faith, love, and fidelity. It is a quiet, beautiful promise of trust. Seeing it is like a small stab to the heart. It represents everything you can never have: trust, partnership, a hand to hold that isn't trying to check you for a hidden blade. You are a ghost, long before you die, haunting the edges of a warm, vibrant world you can observe but never join. Your profession has not only taken the lives of your victims, it has stolen the very possibility of your own. Your profession has not only taken the lives of your victims, it has stolen the very possibility of your own. You are a ghost, haunting the edges of society, severed from the world of trust and companionship. But you still have one fragile tether, one connection to any kind of structure or purpose: the guild. Your employers. They gave you a place, however miserable, and a function, however grim. You follow their orders. You depend on them for your meager pay and your next assignment. You have given them your absolute, unquestioning loyalty. And that is precisely why the final, most exquisitely soul-crushing part of this life is the moment you realize they are, and always have been, your single greatest enemy. The logic is as cold and sharp as your own blade. From your employer's perspective, a successful assassin is a profound liability. You are a living witness. You know the details of the crime, the who, the when, the how. If you were ever captured, you could be tortured into revealing secrets that could bring down powerful people. As long as you are alive, you represent a loose end. And in this business, loose ends get snipped. Remember that half now, half later payment scheme we talked about. Killing you is the easiest way to avoid paying that second larger installment. It's not personal. It's just good, ruthless business. Your paranoia, that constant companion you've nurtured for years, was never wrong. It just might have been aimed in the wrong direction. The greatest threat wasn't the city guard or a rival. It was the very hand that fed you. The betrayal, when it comes, is rarely a simple knife in the back. That would be too honest. It's often wrapped in the disguise of a reward. Imagine this. You've just completed your most difficult assignment yet. It was flawless. The target is gone, and you slipped away without a trace. You feel a flicker of something that might be pride. Your handler meets you, his face unreadable as always, and he tells you the client is ecstatic. So ecstatic that there's a special bonus waiting for you, a chest of silver far beyond your usual crappy pay. All you have to do is go to a secluded location, an old abandoned mill by the river at midnight, to collect it. You go. A part of you is excited, dreaming of what that silver could buy. But as you approach the mill, your finely honed survival instincts scream at you. The place is too quiet. The air is too still. You've learned that a special bonus is often code for a special kind of termination. It's the historical equivalent of an email from HR inviting you to an exciting new opportunities workshop that's actually a layoff meeting. You flatten yourself against the wall listening, and you hear the soft scrape of a boot on the floor above the faint twang of a crossbow string being tested. It's an ambush. They were never going to pay you. They were going to eliminate you. The reward was a lie. The job was always a one-way ticket. This kind of betrayal from within one's own circle is a timeless tactic. In 72 BCE, the brilliant Roman general Quintus Sertorius was leading a highly successful rebellion in Hispania against the government in Rome. He was a master strategist, untouchable on the battlefield. But he was murdered during a banquet, not by his Roman enemies, but by his own ambitious officers who had grown jealous of his power. This is a mainstream historical fact that underlines a brutal truth. The most deadly threats often come from the people who eat at your table and call you a comrade. You are no general, but the principle holds. Your greatest danger lies with your own side. This cold logic makes you question everything. Was this always the plan? Was every mission designed to end this way? Historians still argue whether the betrayal of agents was a standard, almost universal practice for clandestine organizations, or a more desperate measure used only when an operation was particularly sensitive or had gone wrong. Staring at the dark, silent mill where your would-be killers wait, you have your answer. It was always going to end like this. The realization is a different kind of death. It hollows you out, completely destroying any vestige of purpose you might have clung to. Your loyalty meant nothing. Your skill meant nothing. You were never a valued agent. You were a disposable tool, designed from the very beginning to be used and then broken. This is the ultimate sucky truth of being an assassin. All the other hardships are the price of admission. This is the final bloody exit. Staring at the dark, silent mill where your would-be killers wait, your blood runs cold. The betrayal is absolute. Maybe you're fast enough, or just lucky enough to melt back into the shadows and escape their trap. But that desperate flight doesn't change the destination. It only delays the journey. Because whether it's in that ambush, in a filthy alleyway a year from now, or at the end of a rival's blade, your story doesn't conclude in a blaze of glory. There is no epic last stand. Your life's work, all the suffering and paranoia and killing, earns you one final sucky reward, a brutal, lonely death, and a completely unmarked grave. Forget the heroic death you might have imagined in your more foolish moments. You won't die defending a noble cause or sacrificing yourself for a comrade. You don't have a cause, and you don't have any comrades. Your end will be pathetic and grim. You'll be cornered in a dead-end street by the city guard and bleed out on the cobblestones. Or you'll be stabbed by a fellow bottom feeder in a dispute over a stolen loaf of bread. Perhaps that festering wound you received from the target who fought back will finally turn foul and take you in a feverish, delirious haze. Or maybe you simply succumb to the lung rot you picked up in your last squalid hideout. You will most likely die alone. Your last sight, the peeling plaster of a ceiling in a room no one will enter for a week. Your death, like your life, is a solitary affair. After the light leaves your eyes, your body becomes what you always were to your employers, a problem to be disposed of. There will be no funeral, no mourning, no respectful rites. If you're killed by your own guild, what happens next is a matter of pure, unsentimental logistics. Historians still argue about the methods clandestine organizations used to dispose of their own casualties, whether there were designated secret graveyards for fallen agents, or if bodies were simply weighed down with rocks and dumped in the most convenient river ditch or bog. Given the cost-effective nature of your organization, you can probably guess which is more likely. You are trash to be taken out. If your body is discovered by the authorities, your fate is no less ignominious. You are an unknown, unkempt corpse, likely with the tools of a criminal trade on your person. you'll be unceremoniously carted off to a potter's field. This is a mainstream, grim reality of your time. These were parcels of land, often barren and unwanted, used for the mass burial of the indigent, the unclaimed, and the criminal. There are no headstones here. You'll be tossed into a large pit with a dozen other unlucky souls, covered with a layer of quicklime and dirt and forgotten forever. The powerful noble you killed for a handful of coins will rest for eternity in a carved marble sarcophagus inside a grand cathedral, his name praised by generations. You get a communal hole in the ground. Your legacy is to be a historical John Doe, a line in a city ledger that might say, one male vagrant deceased before the page is used to wrap fish the next day. This physical oblivion is terrifying enough, but for you, a person of your time, it comes with a deeper spiritual horror. The quirky and terrifying belief shared across many cultures like the ancient Greeks was that a soul could not find rest without proper burial rites. An unburied soul was doomed to wander the earth, unable to cross the river Styx into the afterlife. You die knowing that no one will close your eyes, no one will wash your body, and certainly no one will place a coin in your mouth for Karen the ferryman. The ultimate fear isn't just death, but an eternity of restless, lonely wandering afterward. It's the final metaphysical suckiness of your career choice. You have no family to claim your body. You have no friends to mark your passing. The identity you had before you joined the guild has been completely erased, and the new one you were given was designed to be temporary. Your death is the final act of your disappearance. You are gone, and soon it will be as if you never were. The ultimate price of your life isn't just death, but utter and complete oblivion. You are gone, and soon it will be as if you never were. The ultimate price of your life isn't just death, but utter and complete oblivion. That is your most likely fate, the one shared by countless other disposable souls throughout history. But what if by some strange fluke, a twist of circumstance, you are not forgotten? What if a story of your deeds, your name, somehow survives the centuries? This in its own way is the final cruelest joke the universe has to play on you. Because your legacy, if it exists at all, will be a tapestry of lies, silence, and misinterpretation. You will have no control over your own story. The first version of your legacy is the one written by your enemies. If your final act was a failed but famous attempt, or if you were successful but captured the state, and the victim's allies will seize your story and twist it into a weapon, you will be posthumously tried and convicted in the court of public opinion. They will paint you as a monster, a creature of pure evil, motivated by some despicable ideology, or perhaps just bloodlust. Or maybe they'll say you were an agent of a rival power, a convenient villain to rally support for a new war. Your actual pathetic motivations, the desperation for coin, the coercion by your guild, the desire to escape a miserable life, will be completely erased. They have to be. The truth that the great man was brought down by a nobody with a cheap knife is too unsettling. It's far more comforting to believe he was felled by a demon than by a desperate, forgotten man. Consider the case of Charlotte Corday, who during the height of the French Revolution assassinated the radical journalist Jean-Paul Marat. This is a mainstream historical fact, but the truth of her legacy is how it was immediately fractured and repurposed. To the revolutionaries, she was a depraved, monstrous royalist, her act a vile attack on the will of the people. To their opponents, she was a heroic martyr, a Joan of Arc figure sacrificing herself to slay a tyrant. Both sides turned her into powerful propaganda, a symbol for their cause. The real Charlotte Corday, a complex person with her own beliefs and fears, was lost in the process. This is your fate. You will be flattened into a caricature that serves the needs of others. If the official record doesn't claim your story, it might fall into the hands of the public, which is arguably worse. Your grim, terrifying life might be picked up by wandering entertainers, the quirky medieval satirists, and poets known as Goliards, or some other traveling bard. In a smoky tavern for the price of a beer, a minstrel will sing a ballad of your deeds, but the song will be a grotesque funhouse mirror of your reality. Your painstaking surveillance will be replaced with a tale of supernatural stealth. Your ugly practical knife will become a jewel-hilted dagger. Your crippling paranoia will be recast as ice-cold confidence. Your miserable, lonely death will become a dramatic, defiant last stand. Your life is no longer your own. It's a piece of cheap, sensational entertainment. It's the trashy, historical tabloid of its day, and you don't even get a share of the profits. Years, decades, and centuries later, what is left for the historians to find? Only these distorted fragments. They are left to sift through the propaganda, the folk songs, and the official condemnations. Historians still argue about the true identity and motivations of many famous historical assassins, as the primary sources were almost always written by the victors or enemies of the victim, turning the killer into a convenient caricature of pure evil or heroic sacrifice. The real you, the person who endured the disgusting gear, the constant fear, the botched jobs, and the betrayals, is lost forever. Your true story is the one thing that is never told. It is buried in silence, under layers of lies. You lived as a ghost, you died in anonymity, and you are remembered as a fiction. And that, after everything else, is the final, definitive reason why it well and truly sucked to be an assassin. And so, our long journey through the shadows comes to a close. The story is finished. Let the image of that lonely figure, the assassin we have walked beside for so long, begin to soften and fade. The sharp edges of that brutal reality can recede, now becoming a distant echo, a story that has been told. The weight of those impossible choices is no longer yours to carry. The chill of the damp cellar, the anxiety of the crowded market, the cold finality of the unmarked grave, you can let them all drift away on the gentle current of your own breathing. You are here now in the quiet and profound safety of your own space. The only sounds are the familiar, comforting hums of your own home. The shadows in the corners of your room are just shadows holding no threat, only the promise of deep and restful sleep. That world of paranoia and peril is a place we have visited, nothing more, and we are leaving it far behind. Allow your mind to grow quiet, letting go of the tale, and feel the stillness settle around you. Your only task now is to rest, to be calm, and to drift into peaceful dreams, far from the troubles of the past.